Creating morphs in Anime Studio Pro is the best way to go ahead and get some fairly sophisticated, complex, but easily controllable animation that you can repeat and reuse, whether it's on your own characters or stock characters that you may buy or ones that ship with Anime Studio Pro. Let's go ahead and use a legacy character that ships with the program right now. I'll open our content library and let's scroll down here to something like Lightning. I'll double click on him. And instead of importing all the different sets, I'm only going to import the front 3/4 here and choose OK. And then I'll close up my library palette. I'm going to zoom in on our character and we're going to look at how he's constructed real briefly just to prove that you can go ahead and use this with any kind of character. Zoom in just a little bit more using the mouse wheel and then dragging my scene around with right clicking. Our character here has already been rigged and there's a bunch of switch layers in here. Some for the mouth, the eyes, and then hands. So it's already set to animate, and it's especially set to do some lip syncing. But let's take a look at the mouth here. With this switch layer selected, if I come over and highlight the switch layer tool, we'll see that we've got the active child that we can select right here. We've got the mouth at rest. Then we have all the different types of vowels or mouth drawings to help it work with the lip syncing. And then we've got a smile down here. So we're pretty light on expressions. We've got a lot of stuff for lip syncing, but we don't have anything that we can do or consider a subtle expression. Let me come back to rest. When we disclose this layer, you can actually create morphs for any other one of these things down here if you want. So just make that awareness there. Also, morphing is a great way to do head turns because we can control all components of the illustration itself and make these nice, complex things that are just tough to do otherwise, and they're repeatable. With that said, let's create our first morph. The most important thing is that you select the topmost layer of the character or object you're working with. The reason being is that when this layer is selected and then we begin creating the morphs, the program knows that anything that is contained within this layer is a candidate for morphing. If instead I said, well, I just want to move the mouth, and I selected the mouth layer, that means that if I've got the eye layer selected, I can't use the morph on the mouth. So if I have the top layer selected, that morph will always be accessible to me. Let me go ahead and open our Actions window here. This is how you create morphs. Now there's a Morph tab. We don't need to go to that. We can simply create a new morph. And I don't know, what do we want to do? Let's make our character smirk a little bit. The timeline highlights. We see it's red. The marker advances to frame 1, and we're going to leave it there and not move that. The first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and change the mouth on the character. With that layer highlighted now, I'm going to use my Transform or Translate tool. Select the mouth. Drag it a little bit, and let's rotate this and maybe offset it just a little bit so it's off to the side. Now I also want to affect, well, how about his nose even? Let's come down to head. There we go. Move the nose just a little bit. And let's disclose eyes. Now we're on the eyes open layer. We see that one active, and that's the one I want to move. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Grab my Translate or Transform tool. Click on the center of the eye, the whole thing highlights, and I'll pull it over to the side. I'll do the same thing for the other eye. And let's adjust the eyebrow just a little bit. Whoops, let me grab the points there. And pull the corner of this out just a little bit. I'll double click on Mainline, and we are back to time frame 0. Our character resets, and we have our first morph. Let's create one now that's a gentle smile. That we had that toothy grin, and not interested in that. We need something a little bit nicer. So with the top layer selected again, we'll come over here and click New. I'll call this Smile Gentle and choose OK. Our timeline turns red, so I know that now I'm working on this. Let me come down to the rest state of the mouth. And with my Translate tool, let me click off of the object. And I'll grab some components here of the mouth, pull it over a little bit, maybe pull that down. And we'll give him a little bit of a quirky smile here, but nicer than that big superhero toothy grin. And I'll leave it like that. With this done, I'm going to double click on the top layer again, make sure we're good, and go back to Mainline. Now we've got two morphs. So how do we begin using these? Well, we go ahead, and I'm going to close this right now. Well, actually, let me prove a point. The morphs are in the Morph tab now, automatically. They're not under regular or smart bones. They've been grouped into the morphs. Let me close my Actions window. Come up here and open Blend Morphs. This gives me the tool set to work with the morphs we just created. So it doesn't work until you start getting into frame 1 and beyond. Right now we're at frame 0. Let me step forward 1 frame, and we're ready to go. I'm going to advance the time frame marker down to, say, 18. And we've got two options, relative to current and absolute. Absolute is if I wanted to go ahead and make sure that there was only a limit to what things would happen. Case in point, the default, the way the face looked when we started, I can go ahead and push this over if we made any changes and we would see it. The smirk, I can go ahead and get that in there and move it back, and then our gentle smile, there it is. Let's compare this to relative. You get some extra animation bang for your buck when you work with the relative because we created the smirk one direction like this. The mouth moves, the eyes move. But what happens when we go the other direction? The eyes move the other way and the smirk reverses. So there's some really nice ways to work with this. So any of these features you just apply and it creates keyframes, super easy to work with in Anime Studio Pro.